stopped watching TV a long time ago, not for any moral reason or because I didn't have time. It just stopped feeling like it mattered. You know how it goes. The same shows, the same news, the same bad reality. But a few weeks ago, I turned it on, and everything changed. It was a Tuesday, I think. Rainy, gray. One of those days that just feels like a haze. I wasn't planning on watching anything, really. I just needed some noise in the background while I worked. When the screen flickered to life, there was static. Just static. I tried flipping through the channels, but it was all the same. Static. At first, I didn't think much of it. Maybe the storm had knocked something out. But as I sat there, staring at the gray and white snow on the screen, something shifted. The static wasn't random anymore. It started to form shapes, words. It was so subtle at first, I thought I was imagining it. Little bursts of letters, like a bad signal struggling to come through. I leaned in closer, squinting at the screen, trying to make sense of it. And then I saw it. A date. Tomorrow's date. It was just there, flickering in and out of the noise, clear as day. October 21st. For a moment, I sat back, feeling stupid for how my heart skipped a beat. It was probably some glitch, right? Maybe the channel was playing an old program, or maybe I had the date wrong. I grabbed my phone to check, but no, it was right. The TV was showing me tomorrow's date. I turned it off, tried to laugh it off, telling myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me. But the weird thing is, I couldn't shake it. The image, the numbers, they stayed with me all night, nagging at the back of my brain like a splinter I couldn't reach. This morning, I turned on the TV again. Part of me hoped for more static, just to prove to myself that it was nothing, a weird glitch. But the screen wasn't static anymore. It was news. And the headline, it was exactly what had happened. A fire, downtown. A building I'd walked past 1,000 times, reduced to ash. The ticker on the screen showed a timestamp for when the fire started, barely an hour before. But the same headline, the exact same one, had flashed on my TV the night before, buried in the static. That's when it hit me. The static wasn't random. It was showing me things that hadn't happened yet. At first, I didn't believe it. I mean, how could I? It sounds insane. But every night, I found myself sitting in front of that TV, watching the static, waiting for the letters to form. And every night, it showed me something new, something that would happen the next day. A car crash on 3rd Street, a politician's scandal breaking in the morning news, stock prices plummeting, all of it real, all of it before it happened. The worst part, it didn't just stop with the headlines. After a few nights, the static started showing me more than just words, images, faces, people I knew, a coworker getting into an argument, my neighbor losing their dog. Every detail, right there, in the static. And every time, it was right. Every single time. It's been 2 weeks since it started, and I've stopped trying to ignore it. I sit there for hours now, just staring at the static, trying to decipher it. It's almost like a puzzle, pieces falling into place. But the more I watch, the more I realize it's not just showing me random events. It's showing me my life, the things it shows me. It's as if it's watching everything I do, the arguments I have, the decisions I make. Yesterday, it showed me leaving the house at 9:47 a.m., getting coffee at the cafe on the corner, and spilling it on my shoes at exactly 9:52. I didn't even know I was going to leave the house. I didn't even want coffee. just like the static had shown me. It's like I'm not in control anymore. This morning, I turned it on again. I didn't want to, but I had to know. I had to see what it would show me next. But instead of a headline, or a fire, or some car crash, it showed me something worse. It showed me, tonight, I was sitting on the couch, just like I am now. The room was dark, and the TV was off. Everything was the same, except for one thing. There was a knock at the door. I leaned in closer, watching the image flicker in and out of the static, my heart racing, because I knew it wasn't going to end there. In the image, I got up, walked to the door, and when I opened it, I saw someone standing there. Number not someone. It was me, a perfect copy. Same face, same clothes, same blank, wide-eyed stare. And in the static, the other me smiled. Then the screen went black. No more static, no more future, just silence. I've been sitting here ever since, waiting for the knock. It's 11:56 p.m. now. The static showed me midnight. I can't stop thinking about it. The knock at the door, the version of me standing there, waiting. If I don't open the door, does that mean it won't happen? Or is it inevitable? Do I even have a choice? I thought about turning off the TV, throwing it out. But what if I miss something? What if there's more it hasn't shown me yet? The thing that scares me most isn't that the TV is showing me the future. It's that maybe it's deciding it. Maybe every time I watch, it becomes real. Like it's not just predicting what's going to happen, but making it happen. What if it's already too late? It's 11:58 now. I can feel it in the air, in my bones. The knock is coming. Maybe the static always knew. Maybe it's been telling me all along. Tomorrow's headline isn't about a fire or a crash or some stranger on the street. It's about me. And if you're hearing this, if you're watching this, maybe the next headline is about you. Maybe the static is already watching, waiting for you to see it. It's midnight, and someone's knocking at the door.
You ever walk into a room and feel like you shouldn't be there? Like it's wrong somehow, but you can't explain why? I've been feeling that a lot lately. Except, in my case, it's not just a feeling. It's real. It started 2 months ago. I was at work, like any other day. Same office, same routines. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, a constant hum of mundanity. I just finished lunch when I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. A door. The thing is, there wasn't supposed to be a door there. I've worked in that building for years and I know every inch of it. This door, plain, unmarked, no handle, hadn't been there the day before. I remember standing there just staring at it. My mind was trying to make sense of it, trying to rationalize what I was seeing. Maybe I'd just never noticed it before, right? Maybe it was some utility closet I'd passed 100 times and ignored. But something about it felt wrong. Curiosity got the better of me. I reached out, hesitated, then pushed the door open. Inside was nothing. Just a small empty room. No furniture, no windows, no light switch. I stepped inside, expecting to find some clue as to why it was there. But the second I crossed the threshold, something shifted. The air felt heavier, colder. The silence was so thick, it pressed against my ears like a weight. I turned around, ready to leave, but the door, it was gone. I swear I only took a step inside, and the door vanished. I was trapped in that room for what felt like hours, pacing back and forth, feeling the walls, searching for a way out. But then, just as suddenly as it had disappeared, the door reappeared. I stumbled out, heart racing, back into the office. Everything was exactly as it had been before I walked in, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts kept drifting back to the door, to the room. It was just so empty. What was it even for? And why had it appeared out of nowhere? The next day, I went back to the same spot. The door wasn't there. I even asked my coworkers if they'd ever noticed it before, but they all looked at me like I was crazy. No one remembered seeing anything. I tried to convince myself that maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe it was some weird hallucination brought on by stress or lack of sleep. But then, it happened again. A week later, I was in a completely different part of the building. The break room, grabbing a coffee. I turned around to head back to my desk, and there it was. The door. Same design, same location, like it had just appeared out of thin air. This time, I didn't hesitate. I pushed it open, stepping inside. Same room, same cold, empty space. But this time, something was different. The floor was wet. I remember looking down at the dark, slick surface, my reflection staring back at me from the shallow pool of water that coated the ground. But it wasn't just water. There were footprints, wet, human footprints leading across the floor to the far wall. I wasn't alone. Panic surged through me. I turned to leave, but the door had vanished again, sealing me inside with whatever had left those prints. My breath came in ragged gasps as I backed up, my eyes darting around the room, searching for any sign of movement. But the room was still. Too still. Just as I was about to lose it, the door reappeared and I bolted out of there. This time, I didn't stop until I was back at my desk, heart hammering in my chest. But the thing is, no one else saw it. Again, the door, the room, the water, it was like it didn't exist, like I was the only one who could see it. That's when the nightmares started. Every night, I'd dream about doors. Doors in my house, in my office, on the streets. Doors that shouldn't be there. Doors that led to places that felt wrong. And in every dream, I'd step inside and the door would disappear, trapping me inside those cold, empty rooms with no way out. Except, they weren't empty anymore. I could feel something in there with me, watching me, waiting. Then, the doors started showing up everywhere, not just at work, not just in my dreams, in my apartment. I'd come home from work, and there it was. In my hallway, in my bathroom, a door I'd never seen before, standing where no door should be. Every time I opened one, it led to the same room, always the same room, and every time I'd see more signs that I wasn't alone. The wet footprints became more frequent. I started finding objects too, things that didn't belong to me. A child's toy, a pair of reading glasses, a single glove, things I couldn't explain. I tried to ignore them, tried to live my life like everything was normal. But the more I ignored the doors, the more they showed up. It's like they were multiplying, following me everywhere I went. One night, I woke up to the sound of creaking. I rolled over in bed, groggy, and there, in the corner of my bedroom, was a door. I didn't put it there. I got out of bed, heart pounding, and reached for the door. The moment I touched it, I heard something. A voice, faint, whispering my name. I yanked my hand away, stumbled back, and the door disappeared. I didn't sleep after that. How could I? What if the door came back while I was asleep? What if I woke up and it was already open? It's been happening more often now. The doors. Every time I see one, it feels like I'm slipping further away from reality. like the world is unraveling around me. I've stopped telling people about it. No one believes me. How could they? I barely believe it myself, but I know it's real. I know because last night something changed. The door wasn't empty this time. When I stepped through, I saw someone, Mr. standing in the center of the room, staring back at me with empty eyes. And then, the door shut. It didn't disappear this time. It stayed closed. I'm scared to open it again. I don't know what I'll find. But the doors, they're everywhere now. I can't escape them. And if you're hearing this, if you've ever seen a door that shouldn't exist, don't open it. Because once you do, they'll never stop following you. You'll never be sure which door is yours anymore, or which world is real.
It started so small, I almost didn't notice. One of those things that makes you pause for a second and think, that's odd, but you shake it off. At least that's what I did. I wish I hadn't. It was the first week of October. Fall was settling in, with cold, crisp mornings and that smell of decaying leaves in the air. I'd been living in this apartment building for 2 years, and everything was predictable. Everyone had their routines, including my neighbor across the hall. An older woman, quiet, kept to herself. We never talked much, just polite nods when we passed each other. But about 10 days ago, something changed. I was coming home from work, arms full of groceries, when I saw her in the hallway. She was just standing there, outside her door, staring straight ahead. Her hands were by her sides, her body unnaturally still. I remember thinking, she's probably locked herself out or something. But what struck me was her face. She wasn't blinking. You know how when someone stares at you too long without blinking, it gets uncomfortable. That's what it felt like. But I brushed it off. People get distracted. Maybe she was just lost in thought. I said, "Hey, everything all right?" No response. She didn't even move, didn't flinch, didn't turn, just kept staring at nothing. I squeezed past her and unlocked my door, but even as I went inside, I could feel her eyes. Or rather, the lack of movement in her eyes. It was unsettling, but I told myself it was nothing. People are weird sometimes. The next morning, I saw her again. She was in the same spot, standing there, eyes wide open, still not blinking. This time, I couldn't ignore it. 2 days in a row. No one just does that. "Good morning," I tried, louder this time. She didn't move, not a twitch. Her eyes looked dry, red, but she didn't blink, not once. I'm ashamed to admit it, but I hurried to work that day, trying to shake off the creeping sense of unease. I wanted to believe it was some harmless eccentricity, or maybe she was sick. But by day 3, I knew something was wrong. Deeply wrong. She was still there, standing in the exact same spot, the same blank, unblinking stare fixed ahead. I don't even think she'd gone inside her apartment. The hallway smelled stale, like someone had been standing there far too long without moving. I didn't say anything this time, just walked past her as quickly as I could, heart racing, skin crawling. By the end of that week, it had become routine. Every morning, every night, she was there, not blinking, not moving. Her eyes, they looked so dry, so strained, like they were begging to close, but they never did. It didn't make sense. People can't go that long without blinking. It's physically impossible. I even looked it up. Your eyes need moisture. They need breaks. But she just stood there, as if she didn't need anything anymore. As if she wasn't human. I started avoiding her, leaving earlier for work, sneaking waiting until late at night to come home, just to avoid walking past her. But I couldn't stop thinking about her, about what was happening to her eyes. On day 6, I came home late, thinking she'd maybe finally gone inside. But she hadn't. She was still there. This time, I couldn't help myself. I had to look closer. Her pupils were dilated. Her eyes were rimmed with cracked red lines, like they were tearing themselves apart from the inside. But the worst part was her expression. There wasn't one. It was blank, like her face had been wiped clean of emotion. No fear, no sadness, no confusion, just nothing. It was like staring into the eyes of a doll, hollow. I didn't sleep that night. I couldn't shake the image of those unblinking, dry eyes. It didn't make sense. It defied logic, defied everything I knew about what was humanly possible. But there she was, every day, every night, never blinking. By day 8, I was losing it. I started thinking I was imagining the whole thing. Maybe I was stressed. Maybe work was getting to me. Maybe I'd hallucinated the entire thing. But then I realized I wasn't the only one who had noticed. I heard the whispers in the building. Other neighbors talking in hushed tones about the strange woman in the hall. Someone even mentioned calling the police, but nothing came of it. Everyone was too scared to get involved. And the woman, she just stayed there, unblinking, unmoving, as if she was waiting for something. Yesterday, I couldn't take it anymore. I finally called out to her. I don't know why. Desperation, I guess. "Do you need help?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Are you okay?" Nothing. Not even a flicker of acknowledgement. I walked right up to her. I was shaking, but I had to know. I had to see her up close, to make sense of it. When I got within inches of her face, I could see the veins in her eyes, bulging, ready to burst. I could feel the heat coming off her skin, but she was so still. Too still. I reached out. My fingers hovered near her shoulder, and I hesitated. I didn't want to touch her. Something inside me screamed not to, but I couldn't stop myself. I needed to know if she was real. The moment my fingers brushed her shoulder, she moved. Just a small twitch, but it was enough to send me reeling back in horror. Her head snapped toward me, eyes still unblinking, and for the first time, she spoke. "I'm waiting," she whispered. Her voice was raspy, like she hadn't used it in years. "Waiting for what?" I asked, my throat dry. She didn't answer. She just smiled. A slow, creeping smile that stretched too far, her lips cracking at the edges, but her eyes, still unblinking, never changed. I ran. That was yesterday. I haven't left my apartment since. I can still hear her out there, standing in the hallway, waiting. She never moves, never blinks, just stands there in silence, like some twisted sentinel. But here's the thing. I don't know what she's waiting for. And worse, I'm starting to feel like I'm the one who's changing. Last night, I stared at myself in the mirror for hours, my eyes wide open, refusing to blink. And you know what? I barely even noticed. It was easy, almost natural. And now, as I sit here writing this, I realize I haven't blinked once. Not once in the past 2 hours. I'm scared to close my eyes. What if when I do, I'm the one waiting next?
I was supposed to be going home. Just a simple drive back from a friend's house, a route I'd driven 100 times before. It was late, and the sky had that inky blackness to it, the kind that almost feels solid, like if you reached out, you'd touch it. The roads were empty, just me and my headlights cutting through the night. I knew the way, but out of habit, I put on the GPS, if only to hear another voice in the car, something to break the silence. At first it was routine: turn left, go straight, merge onto the highway. But then a voice cut through the calm. The familiar GPS voice, only this time it sounded off, slightly distorted like an old cassette tape warped by the heat. It said, "Take the next right." I knew that wasn't part of the way home, but I didn't question it. It's strange, thinking back now, why I didn't even hesitate. I just followed, as if something beyond me had taken over, and I was just along for the ride. The right turn led me down a dark, narrow road I'd never seen before. A road that seemed to disappear into the trees. No streetlights, no signs, nothing. Just darkness pressing in from both sides. The trees seemed to close in, leaning over the road as if they were watching, waiting. The GPS went silent, but I kept going, following the road as it twisted and turned deeper into nowhere. Then, after what felt like hours, the voice came back. "You're almost there," it whispered, and there was something in the way it said it, something that made my skin crawl. It wasn't just giving directions. It was expectant, like it was leading me to something. My hands gripped the wheel tighter. I wanted to turn around, but I couldn't. Every time I tried to slow down, my foot felt heavier, pressing down on the gas, as if my own body was betraying me. Finally, I saw it. Up ahead, a clearing in the trees, bathed in the pale, ghostly light of the moon. The road opened up, and there it was. An old cemetery, hidden away from everything, the headstones scattered like forgotten memories. The GPS chimed again. "You have arrived at your destination," and then it went silent. Completely silent. I should have turned back. I should have driven out of there, forgotten the whole thing. But I couldn't. There was something pulling me, a force I couldn't fight, guiding me forward. I got out of the car, the cold air wrapping around me like a shroud. My breath fogged in front of me, hanging in the air, almost frozen. I walked forward, my feet crunching over dead leaves, the sound too loud, echoing in the stillness. And then I saw it. A headstone off to the side, slightly tilted, almost hidden behind a gnarled old tree. There was something wrong about it, something that made my heart pound in my chest, but I couldn't look away. I moved closer, each step heavier than the last, like the ground itself was trying to hold me back. And then I saw the name. My name, carved into the stone clear as day. My full name. The date etched beneath it. Today's date. I stumbled back, my mind reeling, trying to make sense of it. This couldn't be real. It was some kind of sick joke, some prank. But as I stood there, staring at my own name on that cold stone, I felt something shift. The world around me seemed to warp, like I was seeing it through a fog. Everything twisting and distorting. And then I heard it. A soft whisper, like leaves rustling in the wind, but there was no breeze. "You're right on time," it said, the voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. I turned, scanning the darkness, but there was no one. Just the rows of headstones, silent and unmoving, watching me. I looked back at the headstone, at my name, and that's when I noticed something else, something carved beneath the date. It was a single word. "Welcome." My heart was pounding so hard I thought it would burst. I turned, desperate to get back to the car, but the trees? They had closed in, the road gone, swallowed up by darkness. I was trapped, surrounded by the dead, by the weight of my own grave. I stumbled forward, my hands shaking, reaching out blindly, trying to find my way, but the darkness was so thick, so heavy, pressing down on me. And then the ground gave way, crumbling beneath me, and I was falling into nothingness, into a cold, suffocating void. When I hit the ground, I was back in the cemetery, but everything was different. The air was colder, the silence heavier, the headstones, they were watching me. I could feel their gaze, feel the weight of their stares pressing down on me. And then I realized I wasn't alone. There were shadows all around me, figures moving in the darkness, silent and still, their eyes glinting in the moonlight. They were waiting for me. I backed away, my heart pounding, my mind racing, but no matter where I turned, they were there. closing in, surrounding me. I tried to scream, to call out, but no sound came. I was trapped, caught in a nightmare I couldn't escape. And then I heard it again. The GPS voice, distorted, echoing in the silence. Recalculating, destination. The words sent a chill down my spine, a cold, hollow dread settling over me. I realized then that there was no way out, no escape. I was lost, trapped in a twisted, distorted world that was neither here nor there. And as I stood there staring into the darkness, I knew I had been led here, brought to this place for a reason. This was my destination, my final stop, my grave. And now I can feel it, feel the cold creeping over me, the darkness closing in, pulling me down, down into the earth, into the cold, silent embrace of my own grave. The shadows are waiting, their eyes glinting in the darkness, their voices whispering in the wind. I am here at my final destination, and there's no way out.